Damn, boy. Damn, boy, he's thick. Boy, that's a thick-ass boy.
What's up, thick boys? How you on YouTube? Belton here. Today we are going to be discussing what I've been working on in League now, which is a new armor stacker, Transcendence armor stacker, playing this for the first time. As you can see here, my character was created 2 days ago. This is actually the first time I've ever played this build, ever played this archetype, ever played Transcendence. And so I thought I'd share what I've been up to for the past couple of days, some of the gear choices I've made, yeah, just to kind of get you guys along on the experience here. Often the videos that I make are coming from a place of expertise on my part, not to pat myself on the back, but typically I focus on things where I have a good grasp of everything. This is a novel experience for me, though. And so as a disclaimer, before we go through any of this, I'd like to give a shout out to Big Daddy, which is the last time officially I will ever refer to him as that. Have standards here. Misha has been incredibly helpful to me over the years. Anytime I've had questions about armor stacking, those two people, as well as I'm sure plenty of others, are the ones that come to mind, both of whom have helped me out tremendously in terms of understanding the build and min-maxing it or whatever. And Misha in particular, in past leagues when I was mirror crafting for armor stacking, just to kind of let me know what stuff would be appropriate there. So do keep in mind, again, my first experience here, learning things as I go. So don't take this as necessarily an archetype or a structure to follow, but more so just me exploring a new part of the game that, I know it's a very meta build and quite a strong build. And so I thought, much like the other Lizard King, Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, we'd officially go switch things up to the meta. You know what I mean? Is meta beta? I don't know. We will see. But anyways, I followed loosely the tree provided by Big Daddy, who's come by my stream a few times over the past couple of days to just sort of impart some wisdom and some suggestions. As well, people in my chat on Twitch, as I've been streaming this, have offered some advice throughout. As I come to take it, this is quite a popular build. People feel quite strongly about it, and I've had fun with it so far. So we'll go over what I've been doing, and if you guys have any suggestions in YouTube, feel free to leave some comments and let me know. Again, this is new territory for me, so I'd welcome some advice. All right, that being said, we are playing our new character, Mr. Goldrim Sachs, all-time pun. You can see here we got the level 97. Obviously got our Uber Labs done. Standard, we got the Guardian champion, and we decided to take Path of the Duelist. I guess we'll cover the jewels while we're here. Since we're playing Transcendence Armor Stacker, we need to get 100% Fizz taken as. And as well, obviously, we want to be making use of these small passives with Introspection for the aura effect, as well as stacking Fire Res as high as we can, and managing our ES levels and regen for CI. So you can see here we've got 1 passive voices times 1, times 2, and times 3. And then for the small clusters, all of these are just one similar to this, where they have Introspection and Introspection 35% increased effect, and Fire Res. The 4th mod on some of them varies. Attributes, sometimes it's all res. These were all just sort of placeholder jewels. I crafted these or bought them for usually somewhere between 20 to 40 divines. Eventually I will mirror, if this is a build I decide to pursue, I will mirror the 2% reduced mana cost, ES on hit, Fire Res, or whatever variant there is for the small clusters, because individually having the synth implicits on a rare jewel does not make a huge difference. But when you have 9 of them, in particular, where you have such thin breakpoints on things like mana cost, that can make a substantial difference. So again, these are just sort of placeholder pieces. In terms of the Watcher's Eye, you can see here I've got Fizz damage converted to lightning with Fizz damage taken times 2. The Fizz damage converted to lightning as the 3rd mod choice. We didn't need the Fizz taken as for a 3rd mod, which obviously saves us a ton of cost on the Watcher's Eye. And Fizz conversion to lightning does make it so that a good portion of the Fizz damage that we have base from Replica Dreamfeather gets converted over to lightning, which is our primary damage type. So that's fairly solid, regardless if you're using Molten Strike or if you're using Lightning Strike. Or also partially for Smite as well. We've also got Melding of the Flesh, -70, -4, And here we've got Militant Faith, which is what affords us the ability to get Transcendence. But on top of that, we also get the mana cost reduction and Curse of, or the Aura effect. And we're combining that with Unnatural Instinct, which we have Corrupted Blood immunity on. One of the things that I'm doing actually that is different than Big Daddy, and I think it might actually be somewhat of a novel concept, is where I've actually decided to place these. So the conventional route people take here is to put the Unnatural Instinct in this bottom wheel, and then they connect down through here, getting this basic jewel slot, and then connecting there. However, I figured since you already have Path of the Duelist, which means that you can start from here, and there's not really a mandate that you put the Unnatural Instinct here. You do want the Unnatural Instinct to overlap with the Militant Faith so that you can get these small passives assigned, so you can get more devotion for the aura effect and the reduced mana cost. As you can see here, I've got 170 devotion, which means we get 17 aura effect and 17 reduced mana cost. As well, we get 1% max res, and then the rest of them are just pure devotion points. However, the reason I decided to move Unnatural Instinct up here as opposed to down here is because, in my opinion, it is just better all around. What we get here is 36% area of effect. We also get 20% increased skill duration, which is beneficial for Grace and for all of your Vol skills. On top of that, we also get 1% life regen. We also get 15 int, and we get 8% mana, none of which are available if you put it down here. Now, conversely, if you... Oh, sorry, and you also get 85 to devotion. Now, conversely, when you place it down here, you only get 75 devotion, so there's 10 additional devotion, but you also lose 36% AoE. You only get 10% increased skill duration, so you lose 10% skill duration. You don't get the 1% life regen, and you don't get the int. And what you do gain, the opportunity cost of such, is 9% move speed and 9% block, which is not nothing. And sorry, you also get 18% fire res. The lightning and the cold are irrelevant to the function of it. So you get the 9% block, 9% move speed, and 18 fire res versus 1% life regen, 10% skill duration, 36% AoE, 15% int, 20 strength, and 8% mana. So I think, and 10 devotion. So I think that this is objectively better. Now, the question thereafter would be, the point allocation. And if you were to take this same route, obviously it would not be sensible. However, since we have Path of the Duelist, it allows us to start from down here. And by pathing down here, it's actually the same amount of points that it would be if you were to travel this way. However, it allows you to cross right over here at the jewel passive there instead of taking this jewel passive, which has several benefits. Number one, it allows you to take 2 strength points here, which means that you can put tattoos for fire res. Whereas if you go that way, it's just pure dex. And it also allows you to take this jewel slot here, which means that you're 1 point away from a frenzy charge or from an endurance charge if you like. And furthermore, it does put you in 1 point of Art of the Gladiator. And you still get, again, the same point allocation. So it just affords more options. And again, I think that the differences between these two obviously favor this one. And the point allocation is the exact same starting from here or from there. And the upside to it is, again, you can get the frenzy charge as well as a variety of different single node travel points. So obviously, again, this is just an idea I had playing within the first 2 days. It might not necessarily be something I stick with long term, but I think that was the only thing tree wise that was different than what else would be taken. One thing to point out too is that I'm only level 97, and so when I'm level 100, there'll be a couple other things that we'll add. One of our gear swaps here would be to you can see here I don't have that jewel point right there, so we would take off the 8% mana regen here. And then put that point right here. Put on Impossible Escape. And then we would take 1% max res right here and 2% max res there. And that would give us 90% max res, as you can see. And then for our last point, we would probably take the Frenzy Charge right there. It would also be a possibility to take 2% ES regen. We could get 8% mana reservation. You take Art of the Gladiator. You could take an Endurance Charge. I think that would probably be the bulk of what our considerations would be. Yeah. So yeah, there's some variability and some options to that, but overall, being level 97 is not too much of a hindrance. Granted, I will of course be getting to level 100 or at the very least level 99 today. As I mentioned, we're only on day 2 of the build, so Yeah, and there's the tree and the jewels. In terms of the basic gear setup, it's some of your pretty standard stuff here. Replica Dream Feather. I made these myself. I bought 28 of them, enchanted them myself. A few of them I divined to be 10%, and then I double corrupted them. I ended up hitting the best in slot double corruption, which is resolute technique and attack speed. I believe on my 26th one. Which was quite lucky, as these cost roughly 3 mirrors. Unfortunately, we only got 5% on the corrupted attack speed, which rolls between 5 to 7%, so it's not technically perfect. 1.81, I believe, or 1.8 is the max attack speed. We have 1.77, and since we're scaling largely flat damage through Wrath and the global increased damage that we get from the Replica Dream Feathers, scaling with the armor, that is obviously quite beneficial to have that faster attack speed. But we still got very lucky there, so no complaints. For the shield, we've got Dawnbreaker, which we've got the 20% Fizz taken as with a double corrupted 15% Fizz taken as. So actually, I guess we should cover that. So we want to have 100% Fizz taken as elemental damage or Fizz taken as something else, because it could be chaos as well, in order to be using and maximizing Transcendence. And so you can see we've got 35% here. We've got 18% on the helmet, so that's 53%. 20% on the chest, that's 73%. Then we get 10% from the mastery right here, so 83%. And then from the Watcher's Eye, we are getting 83 plus 21, so 104%. As long as if you have 101%, apparently not at 100%, but 101% will also give you bleed immunity. So we're getting bleed immunity from that, plus all of our damage converted, our Fizz damage taken converted to elemental. We do actually have a good chunk of Fizz damage taken converted to chaos, and since we're playing CI, that gets completely mitigated. And so we have 18% Fizz as chaos here, 8 there, so that's 26%, and then 10% there, 36%, so that just gets flat out mitigated 100%, and then the other Fizz damage gets filtered through our elemental resistance, which at the moment is 87% max res, but again, it'll be 90 once we get those last couple of levels. So yeah, gear-wise though, Dawnbreaker, double corrupted. In terms of other standard pieces, March of the Legion here. We've got the 30% move speed, which is perfect, and 18 all res, which is one-off perfect. And then we've got the +3 with the +5 aura gems. One of the mistakes I notice people make quite often in terms of pricing these and buying them is that people don't either understand or notice the fact that duration gems is the exact same as aura gems and is the exact same as AoE gems in a functional perspective, because Smite is a duration skill, Vol Smite, and Grace, since you're going to have Vol Grace, if you just have a regular Grace gem, it will not be a duration skill, but if you get a regular gem like an aura and you get into Vol version, the Vol version will give it a duration tag, since the Vol skill has duration, and even though the regular aura does not have a duration element to it, since the gem is now tagged as a duration skill, it will still get the benefit. So if you take a look here, we can see that there are 300 divines. You can get +3. Oh, sorry, that might be implicit AoE, implicit aura, count 2 or no 3 plus aura gems 5. All right, there we go. So you can see the ones that have duration on them, 300 divines, 300 divines, and then we go up to the aura gems, 500 divines, 700 divines, 1.3 mirrors, 2 mirrors, 4 mirror or 3 mirrors, blah blah blah, right? And again, from a functional standing, they are the exact same. In fact, one thing as well is that it is better to have +1 to socketed skill gems than it is to have +2/+2. I can tell that a lot of people, just looking at the market, seem to prioritize +2 AoE with +2 aura. It is objectively better to have +1 to socketed skill gems combined with any one of those other 3, because the +1 skill gems obviously applies to Awakened in Power, which makes it the same as the +2, but it also will apply to Inspiration, which reduces the mana cost of both Grace and Smite, so that, you know, it's a small difference, but especially because they got rid of the reduced mana cost craft off of Flask suffixes, it is certainly something that should be considered, at least if they're being sold for the exact same price. There's no reason not to grab that. And often, as I just pointed out, people are they're not valuing the duration gems appropriately. Let me turn off the trade volume here. Chat alerts. Sorry about that. I'll hide my whispers. Sorry for the distraction. Yeah, so that's what we got on the boots there. And again, the other stats on the explicit side, nearly perfect as well. Moving on to the Mage Blood, we've got the double Grace and Determination Aura effect. Unfortunately, they're both bottom rolled, 15%, 15% out of 20, but much better than not having them. And then we've got the 4 Flasks on there, of course. Moving on from that, these are gloves that I crafted myself from scratch. I bought the 100% ES percent is a perfect roll there for the fracture. The fire res is tier 1 fractured. Unfortunately, it's not perfect fracture, but it's only 2 fire res. I only paid 13 divines, I think, for the base that had the double fracture on it. From there, I just used the T1 essence to put attack speed on and used that and exalted until I got the T1 int on there as well. Then I divined the suffixes. Following that, I put on the non-vol strike skills, so the Searing Exarch implicit, and then I elevated that all the way up to perfect. And then I put on the mark effect, and I put that on at the exceptional level, so the 4th Eldritch one. I then used Exalted Orbs and the Eldritch Chaos Orb to just Exalt and then Eldritch until I got T1 flat ES. So at this point, we would have the T1 flat ES with the fractured ES percentage, 1 open prefix, and then our suffixes are done. So from there, I put suffixes cannot be changed and then divined the flat ES to be perfect, so 49 out of 49. And then I just did a process of doing the suffixes cannot be changed, Hinakora's Lock, and then hovered with a Veiled Chaos Orb, or just a Veiled Orb, I guess they're called now, until it removed the metamod, and then unveiled it. Now, it is a 1 in 3, roughly, 1 in 3 to unveil AoE gems. It took me 17 Hinakora's Locks and 14 unveils. So that was incredibly unlucky. It ended up costing me like 2 or 3 mirrors, which was pretty LOL. But one of the things I did as well was, after getting the implicits on there, I put a Gilded Fossil. And it's important, actually, the order of operations to this, so let me rewind for a bit. To get the Gilded Fossil, you have to have the gloves be rare already. And obviously, a fossil will re-roll it. So you have to get your the correct implicits on there. They don't have to be... You can use an Orb of Conflict, right? So you can change the tier of the same implicits with Eldritch, and it won't get rid of the Gilded Fossil. But if you use one of these... So like if you actually try to change the implicit, it'll get rid of the Gilded Fossil. And so the first thing that we would have had to do with these gloves is get, again, the non-vol strike skills and the mark effect on there. So the non-vol strike skills we got to perfect, and then we got the increased effective marks to the 4th tier one here. I think it's it's not exceptional. Yeah, exceptional. And then we put on the Gilded Fossil, and then we would have done with the essences. And then, for the final step, after we eventually unveiled the AoE gems, we would have used a Orb of Conflict to then change it to Exquisite, which would have changed the mark effect from 13 to 15, and it still keeps the non-vol strike skills at 2 additional nearby enemies. And that way we were able to use Eldritch currency for crafting the prefixes, which is obviously much cheaper. And it does allow us still to get the 15% mark effect, which is incredibly important, because the reason you need 15% mark effect is because mark on hit has 15% reduced mark effect. PoE does not work in half values. It always rounds down. So when you have Sniper's Mark, which allows projectiles to split in 2, when you have 15% reduce, it will always make it just 1, right? But by having 15% increased mark effect, it makes it so that you have the 2 split again. And so that's basically all you need mark-wise, and so that's why we made that decision. The Gilded Fossil is on there for a reason that I will reveal in a second with respect to our helmet. But because Eldritch currency, especially this league, or Eldritch items, especially this league, with the inception of graveyard crafting and double fractures and things like that, it is almost always cheaper to craft a quote-unquote mirror item that it has an Eldritch mod and or sorry, that has fractured mods and eldritch implicits than it is to actually go out and mirror one. And because of that, if you quote unquote mirror craft one in terms of your spend, as I did on this, the only way really to justify that in my mind, since you're not going to be able to generate revenue from running mirror services on it, is to at least have the Gilded Fossil available so that you can corrupt. In this case, we could put a Frenzy Charge, +2 AoE, +1 to Socketed Gems, +2 to Aura Gems, Ellie Weakness on hit, Enfeeble on hit, Temp Chains on hit, ES %. There's a variety of ones, right? So having that option is quite good. And with that being said, that brings us to our helmet, which, as you can see, is a perfect example of that, because the helmet happens to have that corruption there for +2 AoE gems. So the primary function of the helmet here was to be the Transcendence helmet, right? So you have to buy a Delve helmet off the bat. The Delve helmets can only be item level 83, which means you can't get T1 ES %. Oh, apologies. So the first thing you need to do is fracture the fizz damage taken as chaos. And once you do that, you can then make it... sorry, I got some heartburn there, guys. The next thing you need to do then is put on the correct implicits in the same process that I just talked about with the gloves. Following which, you then have to use a Gilded Fossil. And then after you get that Gilded Fossil on there with the correct 2 implicits, they don't have to be the right tiers, but the correct 2 implicits, you can then use a Faceted Fossil, sorry, what's the name of the other one? Faceted Fossil, and a Glyphic Fossil. The Glyphic Fossil gives you an Essence modifier, a Corrupted Essence modifier. The Corrupted Essences are these 4 right here, so Horror, Insanity, blah blah blah. One of which is the +2 to Aura Gems, and then the Faceted Fossil makes it so that you can roll +1 to Socketed Int Gems, +1 to Socketed Dex Gems, or +1 to Socketed Strength Gems. On top of that, one of the things I did as well, which can make that process of getting the +2 Aura Gems and the +1 Int Gems significantly cheaper, is by using the fossil, forgetting which one it is, that blocks elemental modifiers, Corroded Fossil. So using a 3-socketed Resonator with Faceted, Glyphic, and Corroded. The reason to do that is because Corroded Fossil will block the Corrupted Essences, because it's like more elemental damage, blah blah blah. It makes it so that it's either the only Corrupted Essence that you can get is the +2 Aura, or it makes it one of 2. Either way, it makes the crafting of hitting Int Gems and Aura Gems take like 10 Resonators instead of like 200. And then since the third suffix is fractured, very easy to get those suffixes done. And then for the prefixes, the ideal situation would have been to have T1 flat ES. You can't get T1 percentage ES because it's item level 83. So T2 is the best that you can get, which is a roll of 91% on its maximum value. And then you want to get the +2 AoE. So the suffixes, which give +2 to Aura Gems, +1 to Int Gems, and the +2 AoE, means that you would get +5 to both Wrath and Discipline, and then +4 to Determination and Vitality, or if you wanted to put Awakened Enlighten where Vitality is, that would also give +1 to that as well. Now, as you can see here, I'm actually missing a third prefix. So what happened in this situation was I got the T1 ES % on there, or sorry, the T1 flat ES, and then I did prefixes, suffixes could not be changed, and use a Hinocor's Luck and a Veiled Orb, right? And so I would check to see the Exalt first, to see if we got T1 ES %, and then if that didn't hit, then I would use a Hover with the Veiled Orb to see if it replaced the meta mod, and if it did, then of course we would just go to June and unveil it and hope to get the AoE after blocking one of the other Veiled modifiers. That was a situation where I don't think I've ever had such bad RNG. It took 45 Hinocor's Locks and it took 19 Veiled Orbs to get the AoE gems, which was just absolutely obscene. It cost like literally 4.5 mirrors. And so at that point I was quite frustrated, as you could probably imagine. And then for the final modifier, what the intention was just to use Hinocor's Locks and then hover with Exalts until you got the ES %, right? You could also just bench craft it at 67%, which would cause, like 20 or 30 ES loss off the top. However, since we were doing that last Hinocor's Lock, right, to get the final ES %, and those are, 85 divines each or whatever per try, I figured I might as well hover with a Vol Orb each time as well, just to see what happened. And lo and behold, we hovered with the Vol Orb shortly after finishing the +2 AoE gems, and we ended up hovering and seeing the +2 to AoE gems, and it replaced the Gilded Fossil. Now, for some perspective on this, the cost to do so is a 1 in 23 chance to get in terms of corrupted implicits, to get +2 AoE gems, and then it's a 1 in 4 chance for a Vol Orb to get a corrupted implicit, and then it's a 1 in 3 chance to have that corrupted implicit replace the Gilded Fossil, which means it takes, I think it was 23 times 3 is 69, and then times 23 times 3, and then times 4, 69, so 276. Wait, 69, 240. Oh my god, I'm brain dead right now. Herp derp. I'm gonna have to pull the calculator. 3 times 4 times 23. 276 attempts on average. So, in the case of the helmet, where I had already spent, as I mentioned, 4.5 mirrors, right? The cost at that point, you could have just bought that exact same helmet with the mods that were on there with that tier 2 ES percent. You could have mirrored one for like a 10 divine fee, or you could have just bought an original one for like 1.2 mirrors. So the fact that I was 4.5 mirrors deep in it already meant that I was basically necessitated to have to go for a corrupted implicit, right? And to get that same implicit on there, it would be that same corrupted mod. It would take 276 Hinakora's locks, which at 83 divines each would be 22,908 divines, which would be 27.4 mirrors to get that replacement, right? And so the opportunity cost of the two things, right? If I really wanted to have the ES percentage on that prefix, I could, again, just buy one for 1 mirror, whereas the loss potential for that helmet would be 27 mirrors. But then again, I did some further investigation after that, right? By having the 91, so if I did have tier 1 ES percent on there, it would be a loss of, here, right to the math. It would be a loss of 139 ES. So it's not negligible, right? So we have 199 flat ES on the helmet. With the T1 ES percent, it would be it's at 238, 338 ES. Now, at first glance, that's quite significant because that would translate to about 400, 300, 400 flat ES on the character. However, you then have to factor in the fact though that +2 AoE gems makes it so that Discipline gets +2 to its gem level, and we also have like 200% aura effect. So I did the math, and just on Discipline, by having +2 to the AoE gems, we actually get 75 flat ES. And then we also have Vitality in there, and Determination, and Wrath. So not only do we get 75 flat ES, which would then drop the 139 to 64 ES, right? We also then get 4% more armor, 804 flat armor, 3 to 259 flat lightning damage, and 63 life regen. So that's all of those things being at the trade-off of 64 flat ES. Which, again, the armor, both the more and the flat, translates to DPS, regen, and, of course, mitigation. And then the flat lightning, with whatever skill we are using, being then scaled up even further with the global increases we have to attack damage vis-a-vis the armor stacking. It's a very clear choice there, both in terms of the opportunity cost of the currency required to make one or the other, but also even just in a one-to-one comparison, the +2 AoE gems is actually better, with, of course, the only caveat being that you lose some flat max life effectively. But again, with all the mitigation and regen we have, the having 4,770 ES versus 4,950 is almost meaningless. And so I was very, very happy with that. And there's one other thing too that is worth mentioning. Now, I'm not going to be doing this in the league, but as soon as the league, maybe in the last couple days of the league, I'll do it, or as soon as the leagues merge in standard. There is also something called a Tainted Exalted Orb, which will unpredictably add or remove a modifier. So, since this is a corrupted helmet, and since we have one prefix missing, we can also always just use a Tainted Exalted Orb and hope for a 50-50 that it adds a mod. So, the reason I'm not doing that in League is because, first of all, it's a 50-50 to add a mod or to remove a mod, but then not only do we have to pass a 50-50, it also then has to pick ES percentage, and since mana is so heavily weighted, I didn't want to take that risk because, you know, it's like a 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 that we end up adding like 30 flat ES. But if there's a 50% chance that we end up losing, like bricking the helmet entirely, right? No matter what mod that would get removed there, it would brick the helmet. So in terms of, you know, again, opportunity cost, or, you know, what the benefit or upside potential is of doing that in the middle of a league when I'm using it on a character versus what the potential risk is in doing so, that's obviously not a decision I'm going to do, especially given the cost and the lower player base in the league right now. But when the league ends, we'll do that as well. So again, the helmet is incomplete, but I know I posted a short on this of my YouTube. If anyone in Twitch chat watching right now, or anyone watching this on YouTube actually wants to see the moment where I got the +2 AoE gems, I made a YouTube short covering that a day or two ago. So you can check that out on my shorts page there. But some people were asking me why it was that I only have 5 mods, and that's the reason there. So moving on the chest here, we have actually kind of a pretty unique chest. I actually mirror crafted myself a chest, and this is a fairly standard one. So we've got the overcap fire res global defenses, Fizz taken as, T1 int, the T2 fire, and then ES regen with grace and aura effect. However, Misha, shout out to Misha, crafted this really cool chest here, which has, again, it has the overcap and it has the global defenses, but using the Graveyard Necropolis craft, he also got elevated redeemers on there, which gives 18 fizz taken as cold, but the elevated effect also gives cold damage taken recouped as life. And since that then makes the elevated fizz taken as have a life tag, you can see that he also put then the 15% increased life modifier value, which makes the 18% fizz taken as go to 20% fizz taken as. And that's very cool because of Transcendence, right? We need to get the 100% fizz taken as. And having 20% here versus the 12% on one like this is a substantial difference. You know, it could be you don't need to have a corruption on your shield. You could also get rid of the helmet there, or you could possibly free up a modifier. Instead of having to get a triple purity watchers, you could just get 2 of them. And so it does open up quite a few options. On the suffixes, he's got 30% aura effect, 10% frenzy on hit, and ES regen. So the 30% aura effect, again, applies to all auras, right? Whereas on this chest, you only get 20% to all auras. Now, Grace obviously gets impacted more, and so this does make Grace better, but that 10% aura difference does also apply to, you know, Purity of Fire and to Determination, and, you know, since we're running how many auras? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 different auras. Of course, you know, that 10% additional ends up being the equivalent of 80% aura effect versus 20% additional that Grace would be getting. So, you know, even though Grace is disproportionately stronger, it actually is a lot closer just in that respect. Frenzy on hit is incredibly useful. Last league, obviously, you could get that through that which was Taken's. You could have things like, you know, Blood Rage, or where else could you get frenzy charges? Like frenzy charge on kill or whatever. But having that on the chest suffix is incredibly good. The DPS for the build is not out of this world, but having the frenzy charges certainly makes things a lot better, especially with how well it scales with attack speed. And again, when I started the video, I pointed out on our tree how we traveled down this way, which again gives us access to a single point frenzy charge, which again is well taken advantage of by using this chest. So as you can see, we've got the 2 chests still, so we could swap between the 2 of them, but that is the choice that we made there. For our rings, this isn't one of the ones I mirrored this off of Misha, so shout out to Misha for the craft. You can see we've got reduced mana cost, Grace determination effect, and then we've got just T1 flat ES, mana with reduced mana cost of skills, minus mana, fire res, int, and strength. The reason why strength is on there is because the chest has the 200% attribute requirements. It does make it so that you need to have 180 strength, 180 dex, and 180 int. Obviously into something that's fairly easy to cap, given that we're going to be looking for it, you know, on our crafting gear. We've got the int there, plus we pass through it on the tree. The dex is obviously quite easy to cap, given the fact that we travel through this area here. However, the strength is rather lacking in terms of availability on the tree, so having that strength there makes it so that you can hit the requirements for the chest rather easily. And then for our other ring, I'm using Nimbus at the moment. One of the things I've been doing in the past day has been double corrupting Nimbus. I have actually done, I believe, 41 of them now. 41 double corruptions. Yeah, we've done 41 double corruptions. We've hit 9 of them that have had 2 implicits. Some of them actually, sort of funnily enough, have been quite valuable. We hit Hatred effect 3 times, the cheapest of which are about 2 mirrors. So we got Hatred, Hatred, and Cold Damage, and Hatred and Malevolence. But we still have not once hit Grace effect or Determination Aura effect, which has been a little bit frustrating since these are 82 or 83 divines each. It's a 1 in 30 to hit either Grace or Determination, and we've, as I mentioned, we've done 41 of them. So we shall persevere, but that is why we have the Discipline Aura effect on there. It does still give us, you know, I think it's something like 250 ES from the Discipline Aura effect, because we have a level 28 discipline. So that is a rather underrated corrupted implicit, I do think. Another thing as well that we have is apparently, I thought this was, you know, I have a pretty high threshold for myself in terms of gear, I guess, but I've been complimented on this utmost quite frequently. You can see here we've got the 6% max res, which is the 5% then catalyzed up to 6, which is perfect. And then we've also got 20% penetration, which is again perfect. We've also got 21% suppression, so that's 21 out of 30%. And then we've also got 24 attack and cast speed, which is a range of 0 to 40. So the most important things here would be the max res first and foremost for the Transcendence to allow us to get to that 90% max res cap. And then the penetration would be the next DPS one. Suppression, we're not capping, so it's not as important. Attack and cast speed is quite important in terms of scaling our damage, but it's much easier to get attack speed than it is to get pen. So, you know, the priority order there would be max res, pen, attack speed, suppression. And so pretty happy with that one. And that's where we're landing there. In terms of the gems that we're using, we've got a 2123 Molten Strike, 620 Awakened Focus, 520 Awakened GMP, 620 Awakened Lightning Pen, 2120 Volatility, and I haven't double corrupted this yet, but a 520 Awakened Multi-Strike. We can also swap out Lightning Strike here, which I do sometimes, just like running temples. I haven't had too much of an opportunity to do many maps or T17s or anything like that. As I mentioned, the character is only, you know, 2 days old, so you know, we'll eventually get there. After I finish this video, I'll probably do some leveling today on stream, and Molten Strike would be more so targeted towards bosses and things like that, especially with Nimbus. That is incredibly strong, since the initial projectile won't all hit the same single target, but when they return, all of the projectiles will land on it. So that is quite good, and that's also why you want to get 23 quality on this, because the additional effective quality makes the projectiles deal more damage with hits, which counteracts the less damage with hits that the upper part of the gem does. And since all of the projectile hits, as I mentioned, every projectile when it returns from Nimbus will hit the boss, getting that quality is much better, especially because Vol Molten Strike is not very good. But Vol Lightning Strike is a little bit better in my, well, I think it feels better for just clearing when you're running things. So yeah, that's what we've got in the 6-link setup there. With the boots, we've got a level 34 Vol Grace, level 34 Vol Smite, 2120 Inspiration, and a level 5 Awakened in Power. In the gloves, we've got a 2120 Vol Haste, a level 5 Awakened Enlighten, level 2120 Purity of Elements, and 2120 Purity of Fire. In the helmet, we've got 21 Vol Discipline, 21 Vitality, 21 Determination, and a 21 Wrath. The Wrath and the Discipline both get 7 gem levels from the helmet, and the Vitality and the Determination both get 6 gem levels. In the shield, we've got faster attacks, shield charge, and molten strike. The faster attacks and the shield charge are things that are fairly flexible. Leap slam is what a lot of people prefer, because it means that you don't really need to scale move speed. I prefer shield charge as a mobility skill, because shield charge scales off of base weapon attack speed, global attack speed modifiers, and it scales off of character attack speed. And so doing things like temples, which as I mentioned is what I've been running most recently for the Nimbus purposes, it is astronomically faster than Leap Slam is, especially if you don't have faster attacks attached to it. It is just way faster. The only downside is, of course, that Leap Slam can jump over gaps and like walls and stuff, or ledges rather, whereas Shield Charge can't. So frequently, I will actually have both of them in there like this, and then just use Leap Slam whenever I need to get over a ledge. Molten Shell is incredibly important, of course, when you're doing bosses and like T17 content, but for something like temples, the Molten Shell is a little superfluous. Plus, you know, there's quite a few buttons to click already, so I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Other things that you can put in here too would be like a totem. You can put a war cry in there, flesh and blood, a stance skill. You can put a golem in there. There's quite a few options. You know, again, I'm on day 2, so I won't speak to that with any firm affirmations, but I think there's some variants that you can have there. On the glove, or sorry, on the sword, we've got Sniper's Mark and Mark on Hit, and then I also have Defiance Banner. I noticed that quite a few people are running Inspiration on here, so that the Sniper's Mark is 0 mana. I don't really think that's super necessary, especially because Defiance Banner, I believe, is incredibly strong. Defiance Banner gives us crit immunity because it makes nearby enemies have 40% reduced critical strike chance, but with our aura effect, that goes to 100%. And it also gives us like 55% increased armor and like 55% increased evasion because of iron reflexes. That all goes to armor. Plus, when you plant the banner, it also gives aura effect. So all in all, I just think it's incredibly strong for a 10% reserve. And since you can be somewhat restricted on your gem availability, given how many strong options there are with the build, I think that's just a better use. And also, Sniper's Mark only costs 9 mana, even without the inspiration, and I have 85 mana, so that's not that big of a deal. The more reduced mana cost you have, so when I was mentioning earlier on with the small cluster gems, we can mirror the ones that have, you know, the reduced mana cost on the implicit. For every 1% reduced mana cost we get, Grace here, when we cast Grace, you can see it's 39 mana cost. That drops by, I believe, it's either 3 mana or 4 mana per percent. So just getting 1 jewel with 2% reduced mana cost would make this, I can't remember, it's either 33 or 31 mana. Right, so the Sniper's Mark, you know, the better I scale this up with respect to getting those jewels, is not going to be an issue. So it's very unlikely that I'll put Inspiration back in there again. And then what else do we have gem-wise? Did we cover everything? Helmet, shield, gloves, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, all right. So then for flasks, as you can see, I just lined these up because there's lots of options with the flasks, of course. Oh, sorry, one more thing to point out too. Nimbus, you don't actually need to use. You could also take out Awakened Lightning Pen and put in returning projectiles there, and then you could run Calandra's Touch instead. So if you do that, you obviously get an additional 8% reduced, or 14% reduced mana cost, and -8, both of which apply to Grace, which is going to make that cost 0, basically. And you also get the aura effect, of course, plus the attributes. The one thing is that, of course, you would lose the gem for having to put return projectiles, but Dex is actually relatively difficult to hit. If you look here, you can see I have 181 Dex, and it would require 180. And the reason for that is because we're getting stun immunity through tattoos, and so it's 10% stun, chance to avoid stun per tattoo, which means we're losing 100 Dex in order to get that. So by taking this out and putting in KT, you can see that we need 55 more Dex. Now, that is something that you can solve with the 4th mod or your 2nd suffix on the small cluster jewels. So you can get the roll that's on here right now, all right? If you got like T1 all attributes, right, as your operative mod there, that would obviously sort that out. Or you could take like, you know, Art of the Gladiator or something like that at one point. But for practicality's sake, it's just obviously pretty easy to put Nimbus in there. But that is an option to swap out as well. And that's one of the things I like about this build, and most builds in general, for me, I think, in terms of ones that I find to be fun or meaningful pursuits are, you know, do they scale well? Like, do they have a high gear ceiling where, like, you know, there's meaningful upgrades to pursue? And does it allow for some customization and variance, right? I like being able to swap flasks, swap gems, swap, you know, corruption, swap whatever it is, based on whatever task it is I'm looking to do at the time. I just find that far more fun to pursue. Anyways, that's those are the gear swaps, the gems, and the actual crafted gear. Now for the flasks, we have a ruby flask, which gives us, of course, the max res and all of the fire res. On this one, I have 3% life regen because of Zealot's Oath. Zealot's Oath that gives us ES regen. So you can see we have at 3100, which goes to 20. So that gives us almost 700 ES per second. That flask suffix. Then we've got a basalt with armor, a jade flask with all res, and a stibnite with evasion percent. For the unique flask, you can just change this based on what you're doing. Currently, I have Oriath's End, which we get the explode for clearing out. As I mentioned, I was just doing temples, so it's useful for that. And then the all res, of course, gives us the regen, the damage, blah 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 blah. You can also put in the bottled faith, so you can get consecrated ground and increased damage taken. Obviously, we're running resolute technique, so the crit doesn't matter. But this also does give 5% regen as well if you're on consecrated ground. Dying Sun gives you additional projectiles if you're running Molten Strike and some AoE, but it would be a little bit superfluous given the fact that it's a ruby flask. Yeah, so you can, there's other options. You could also use a Vinctars with Fizz conversion to lightning, because that would give you 100% Fizz to lightning conversion if you do have the same watchers that I do. For example, running Lightning Strike, that would give you 100% lightning damage. But it's going to depend whether or not you're using Molten Strike, or if you're just running straight up Vol Smite, or if you're running Lightning Strike. Again, you can make those decisions yourself. For the flasks right now, the flasks I have in there are for maximizing our armor percent. You can see here we've got 3,460,000. Is that right? Yeah, 3.5 million armor with this flask setup. 3.5 million armor and around 3,500 ES per second. Realistically, when I'm actually mapping, though, I typically take these out, put in a silver flask. The silver flask can either have attack speed, or I put the life regen on the silver flask, and then I put the all res on the ruby like this. When you do it like that, it makes it so that we have 2,145,000 armor. For something like temples, obviously that's not a huge difference. The Quicksilver with the move speed is obviously just pure mobility, pure utility. Silver Flask obviously gives you the onslaught with the increased effect, so that's far more functional. Doing maps, you could also just not run a Quicksilver at all and just rely on the Silver Flask, put the Stibnite back in, and doing that, we would be around 3 million armor. And if you're using Leap Slam as your mobility skill, especially if you have just the attack speed, your movement speed is not that important. Now using Shield Charge, again, it does scale off of attack speed, base attack speed, and move speed, so it kind of triple dips, so to speak. But if you're just using Leap Slam, then having this Silver Flask, for example, and then you could do like that, so you still get the regen. You'd be good to go. You just have to swap out the Shield Charge, and blah blah blah. You notice no difference at all. And obviously, if you're killing a boss, you probably don't need a ton of move speed to begin with. But again, one of the things I like, seemingly, for the limited exposure I have to this build, is that you can change those things around. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at right now, guys. In terms of tattoos as well, we changed all of the int tattoos to 3% ES, since an int 10 int gives us 2% ES. That's obviously just 1% additional ES. Is there anything else here? Oh yeah, we've got 2 fire res tattoos there. Sorry, 3 fire res tattoos. Precise techniques, since we have obviously a resolute technique that gives us 40% more damage. Transcendence there. And yeah, so we've got the 3 points left. Those 3 points will be going to 1 point right there, and then in that jewel we'll put the Impossible Escape, and then the other 2 points will be going into Prismatic Skin and Soul of Steel, and that'll give us again 87. Sorry, that'll give us the that'll give us the 90% max res that we're looking for. So that is the plan for now. The one thing I will still tell you guys, though, is what the total cost has been so far of this stuff. since that is always something people seem to want to know. Open. And again, we're only on the second day of this character, but the shield here was 2 mirrors. The weapon is worth 2 to 3 mirrors. Helmet we spent 5. Amulet 1. Body armor, so the mirror plus the fee, 1.25 mirrors. The ring, 1.25 mirrors. The belt was 4 mirrors. The boots are 1 mirror. The gloves are 3 mirrors. The 3 1 passive voices are 9 mirrors. The 9 times 6% mana reservation jewels were 1 mirror. The Watchers was 80 divines. The Unnatural Instinct with Corrupted Blood immunity is 75 divines. The Perfect Melding was 40 divines. The Militant Faith was 600 divines. Impossible Escape, 30 divines. The various, Magic Flasks, 100 divines. Level 5 Awakened in Power, 1.3 mirrors. Level 5 Awakened Enlightened, 2 mirrors. The Nimbus that I had equipped was 100 divines. The other gems, 1 mirror, so all of the other gems being Molten Strike, Awakened LE Focus, Awakened GMP, blah blah blah, all the 2120s. That was approximately 1 mirror. The chest swap was 1 mirror. I crafted this from scratch, so it cost me approximately 1 mirror to make this. And then the Nimbus Corruptions we have spent 4 mirrors on so far. So you can see here the outcomes we've got from that. Now this is just paper profit, but the player numbers in this league being so low, I am somewhat skeptical that all of these will sell. But based on market value from the 41 rings I've corrupted, I've actually made 4,640 divines of profit, or 5.56 mirrors of profit, despite the fact we've spent 4 mirrors in cost. And that largely comes down to the fact that I've hit Hatred 3 times. Again, I'm quite skeptical that these will sell. Bit of a buyer's market there. But we'll see what happens with that. Again, I'm going to continue pursuing those until I get at least Grace Effect or Determination Aura Effect there. But for right now, Discipline Aura Effect is fine. I actually do have one that has 20% Discipline Aura Effect, as well as 27 Rarity, which is naturally better than Cannot Be Poisoned, and 17, especially because we are immune to Chaos damage. I was mentioning the issues with decks, right? This one has 50 decks, and this one has 56, and we only have 181 decks, and I need 180, so by swapping for that 3% Discipline Aura Effect, we'd actually have to spend an additional point on the tree. Again, this is something that I'll be able to fix just with a single suffix on one of the cluster jewels. But again, we're only on day 2, so little tiny things like that are obviously things that'll get leveled out with time. But yeah, I've really actually enjoyed playing this so far. It's been a cool experience. I think the build is very interesting. I'm sure many of you on YouTube here have seen my last video that I posted to YouTube on the Elemental Hit build I was playing, which was 145 mirrors. The 145 mirror Elemental Hit Deadeye build showcase. Quite a few people were commenting in that video that I should have played Armor Stacker instead, and that 145 mirror build LOL can still die LOL. And because I'm spiteful and prideful and I have a fragile ego, I decided to make an Armor Stacker to prove that I can swap builds, but you can't stop being poor. Get wrecked. But no, joking aside, it was something that I've wanted to play for a while. I've crafted for it before, but I never actually tried the archetype. The people who play this seem to be incredibly passionate about it, in the same way that I was with Discharge for so many years. So I figured if that many people enjoy it, it's probably something I should give some attention to. And as the thumbnail for this video suggests, we can maybe find out, is it that I'm actually that shit, or is it that I'm just playing off-meta builds, right? If I can't kill T17s and I can't kill Uber bosses with my basically de facto unlimited budget, and playing, what is largely considered to be one of the, the S tier skills in the game, possibly if not the most defensive skill or defensive build in the game, then clearly I am indeed what so many of you comment on my videos and say to me every day on stream: terrible at this game. But hopefully, for my own sanity's sake and pride and 11 years and 20,000 hours of my time, it was perhaps just some naivete and inexperience on my part. So we'll see how she goes. The next couple days I'll be playing this and streaming it live on Twitch, going through that process. We still got all of our mirror items from our bow build now. Those have been doing quite well. We've done 47,495 divines worth of mirror services. 70 mirrors I've made passively from those, so those have been largely, obviously, paying for many of our pursuits thereafter. Yeah, looking forward to taking this build into some maps, trying it against some bosses. I just want to let you guys know what I've been up to for the first couple days with this. And please, again, this is not by any means an area of expertise on my part. And so I'd be totally open to some suggestions or tips for improving it, or, you know, things to avoid, or you know, thoughts and ideas. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I know it was probably a little bit longer than I intended it to be, and maybe a little bit too detailed at times, but that's just how I am. And I'm sure most of you that are subscribed understand that by now anyways. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you soon with another video. I hope you're having a fun league for those of you still playing. God bless. Good luck. Take care, boys. See you next time.